The quarterback situation in this 2026 class for Ole Miss is going to be probably one of the biggest storylines out there because, like you said, Ben, they didn't sign one last year. They went out into the portal, but now they have positioned themselves with one of the better quarterbacks in the entire 2026 class, in my opinion, in Landon Duckworth out of Jackson, Alabama. And he's probably target number one in terms of when you look at it from a realistic and a like that balance of realistic versus, top targets, true top guys. This is somebody who is a top 100 prospect in the country, nationally, a top 10 quarterback. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, we've started throwing up these recruiting profiles of these players, and we're going to add film here in the future as well. But Landon Duckworth, he's got that ability to make plays both with his feet and his arm. He's a multi-sport guy. He won a state championship, another state championship in basketball recently, and he's really developed his arm talent. And I think that's where you see the encouraging signs for a player that has really blown up over the last year. He was originally committed to South Carolina. He decommitted. He's picked up Georgia. He's picked up Ole Miss. He's picked up a lot of top offers since decommitting. And Ole Miss has really shot, in my opinion, to the top of his list. Ole Miss hosted him. It was the only visit he took in that January open window. They got him in Oxford and were able to really impress him. And I expect them to get an official visit. I would say Florida State, Georgia, South Carolina are involved with him as well. But I think going into the spring, it's safe to say, you talk to anybody, that Ole Miss has set the bar pretty high in this recruitment. But you can never count out a program like Georgia hanging around. They've continuously recruited the position well, not necessarily developed the position that well in a sense, but that's another discussion. So Landon Duckworth is somebody that they've really done a nice job with. And to kind of keep this concise, and we'll talk about a couple of 5 stars in a second, but you mentioned trying to sign 2 quarterbacks. Reese Wise out of Austin Westlake High School, a fabled producer of quarterback talent throughout the state of Texas and around the country with some of their history there. Reese Wise is kind of the next up, and he really broke out this year. Has been waiting his turn in a sense, has been on the radar for a while, which some of these Texas quarterbacks can be even if they don't start. But trying to continue the tradition of guys like Drew Brees and Cade Klubnik of continuing that state championship legacy. That's what, Reese Wise wants to finish off his career with. But he was also in Oxford this past month now, I guess, stopping in where he picked up his offer on that unofficial visit to Ole Miss February 1st. And his family just loved it. And really, it stood out to him. He's got 2 visits set to get back to Ole Miss, one in April for spring practice, and then another the last official visit weekend of June. And then he's going to trip to Arizona as well. At least those are his announced visits. He's taken some others. He's stopped in at places like Baylor and SMU in Texas and schools around the country. He'll still take some other visits, I would imagine. But right now, if I'm a betting man based on what I've seen and what I've heard from the quarterbacks around the country that Ole Miss is after, if you're looking to place a bet on a 2 quarterback class, this is my bet. You also get into some of these 5 stars. Jared Curtis is one who, we've seen, like last cycle with Bryce Underwood and LSU and Michigan, we've seen some flips late. We saw Dante Moore flip from Oregon to UCLA. And just because somebody isn't necessarily having your school or your program at the top of the list right now doesn't mean that can't change. But the one that everybody asks about a lot is Jared Curtis out of Nashville. And right now he is down to Georgia and Oregon. And then you've got Ryder Lyons out of California, who most people don't have Ole Miss in the lead for, but they've hosted him. They've got a teammate of his committed in Jamison Powell in the 2026 class. But now Michigan's really shooting up his list. So that one is going to get a little complicated as well. So we'll continue to watch both of those guys, 2 5 stars that Ole Miss has been after for a minute. But look, if you can sign 2 quarterbacks, it's going to be mission accomplished. They really hope that it's Landon Duckworth and I would say Reese Wise at this point, and it's stacking up pretty well for the Rebels to potentially do that.
It's interesting because Ole Miss is in the place now, even though they don't have the quarterback production they had when they went and got Austin Simmons, but they're in that place where, all right, let's find the next guy to start the developmental track. It's sometimes we sometimes forget that Austin has been here for 2 years. He reclassified up 2 classes. He was 17 when he got on campus. Now that's pretty unique. I mean, you don't see that happen very much. So they're not going to be able to duplicate necessarily what they did with Austin Simmons. But what you are seeing is very similar as it happened to get Austin Simmons. Ole Miss started out with in the Jared Curtis and the Ryder lines. I mean, that was the main conversation. Same thing with like Marcel Reed back when he ended up flipping to Texas A&M at Ole Miss and goes and gets Austin Simmons. At the end of the day, keep your ear to the ground, because where last year it was about, well, if it's the right guy, this year it's about, no, it's got to be both the right guy and the best guy. And, I think that the way you lay that out with Reese and specifically Landon Duckworth makes far more sense and seems far more plausible than what we know they've been talking about doing, which is let's get Landon Duckworth in here and Ryder Lyons and let the best man win, because maybe one or both of them you can get out of the portal next year but getting both of them together on that developmental track will be hard. So that's what I've heard too about Landon specifically. They feel the best with him, think he's a stud, feel like it's going and trending in all the right directions, but don't sleep on Reese Wise as well, because that's another player that they think can,
sit. Like he can sit and he'll be totally okay with that. He comes from like one of the quintessential programs of wait your turn, you're going to be fine, you're going to be a national name, you're going to sign with somebody, and they've produced good quarterbacks. Doesn't mean he'll be that guy, but
right.
They just seem like they love Ole Miss, and the visit schedule, at least. I'm not huge on the last visit meaning as much anymore, but it seems like it sure tees up for Reese to end up at Ole Miss. Like if they get a Landon Duckworth at some point over the next however many months, that would set up for then Reese to maybe jump in the boat after that happens. And then that would, be something that maybe they've talked about with Landon or what have you. So,
because here's part of the calculus too, that can't be forgotten. AJ Maddox was a coveted player coming out of high school. All right. Now, I don't think AJ Maddox is going anywhere after this year. He's got his brother Anthony, the defensive lineman, now on campus with him, a mid-year enrollee, 4-star prospect, both in the state. But let's just say, and it could completely happen because it happened last year. Jackson Dart goes down in the Georgia game. Austin Simmons steps in, performs well. Jackson Dart takes his job back, because Austin was the backup and Jackson was the starter. But if you don't think that schools didn't immediately try to gauge Austin Simmons about, hey, are you happy? Because this is a stud. Imagine that happening with AJ Maddox. So getting numbers in the room, but also setting your room up for the future based off of players that are both realistic and are on the developmental track of your now starter in Austin Simmons. So that for me is their number one recruiting question. Is we know they want 2 quarterbacks. Who are they? Reese Wise and Landon Duckworth. That's more realistic. It kind of fits what they're going for. I know everybody wants Ryder Lyons and Landon Duckworth. Or hey man, Jared Curtis is going to either Georgia or what's the other one? Ohio State?
Oregon.
Even worse.
Yeah.
Like Oregon.
Let them go all the way out there.
Yeah, even worse. So yeah, Ole Miss is doing exactly what you want to see them doing. They're exploring every and all option, but that shows you what is the most important position as far as high school recruiting, not portal, high school recruiting. It's quarterback this year. Last year, that's not what the focus was. This year, it is absolutely quarterback.